The bus never came. Lyra pulled her threadbare coat tighter against the bitter wind, watching her breath frost in the air. 3 days she'd been waiting at this godforsaken stop, living on stale crackers and melted snow. The bench was her bed now, the rusted shelter her only protection from the storm that had been raging for hours. She should move on. Find another town, another chance. But her feet were numb, her stomach empty, and her wolf was too weak to shift. 6 months of running would do that to a rogue Omega. A small sound cut through the howling wind, a whimper, soft and desperate. Lyra's head snapped up. Through the swirling snow, she saw something that made her heart stop. A child. A little girl, no more than 3 years old, stumbling through the drifts in nothing but a torn pink dress and bare feet. The scent hit her then. Wolf pup. Unmistakable. But that was impossible. Wolf children didn't wander alone. They were precious, protected, guarded by their packs with fierce devotion. A pup this young should be safe in some warm den, not dying in a blizzard. The little girl's dark hair was plastered to her head with snow, her lips blue with cold. She moved with the unsteady gait of exhaustion, following her nose more than her eyes. Following Lyra's scent. The child stopped 3 feet away, swaying on her tiny legs. Golden eyes, wolf eyes, stared up at Lyra with ancient wisdom that didn't belong in such a young face. "You need a home," the little girl said, her voice barely a whisper above the wind. "And I need a mommy." Lyra's Omega instincts roared to life. Protect. Shelter. Save. Every cell in her body screamed at her to gather this child close, to warm her, feed her, guard her with her life. It didn't matter that Lyra was homeless herself, that she had nothing to offer. This pup was in danger, and that was all that mattered. But her rational mind rebelled. She was rogue, cast out, barely surviving. She couldn't take care of a child. She couldn't even take care of herself. "Sweetheart," Lyra whispered, sliding off the bench to kneel in the snow. "Where's your mama? Your pack?" The little girl took another step forward, stumbling. "Gone. All gone. Been walking forever." Her tiny hand reached out, fingers blue with frostbite. "You smell safe. Omega. Like mama smelled. Like mama smelled." Past tense. Lyra's heart cracked open. This child was alone. Truly alone. An orphan pup in the middle of a blizzard, and she'd somehow found the one person stupid enough to be sitting at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere. "What's your name, baby?" "Ember." The little girl's legs buckled, and she would have fallen if Lyra hadn't lunged forward to catch her. The child was ice cold, her skin pale and waxy. Hypothermia. She was dying. "It's okay," Lyra murmured, pulling off her coat and wrapping it around the tiny form. "I've got you. I've got you now." She should call someone. The authorities. Child services. Anyone who could actually help this pup. But the nearest town was 20 miles away, and Ember didn't have 20 minutes, let alone the time it would take to get help. Besides, what would she tell them? That she'd found a werewolf child? That she was a werewolf herself? Humans didn't understand their world, and getting involved with human authorities was dangerous for any supernatural being. No. She'd have to handle this herself. Lyra lifted Ember into her arms, shocked by how light she was. The child should weigh more. Should be stronger. But she felt fragile as spun glass, burning with fever despite the cold. "My pack," Ember whispered against Lyra's neck. "They were bad. Hurt me. I ran and ran but got lost." White-hot rage flashed through Lyra. What kind of pack hurt a pup? What kind of monsters? A low growl rumbled through the storm. Lyra froze, her arms tightening protectively around Ember. That growl hadn't come from her. Someone else was out there. Someone big, powerful, and very, very close. Through the swirling snow, a massive shape materialized. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and darker eyes. He moved with the predatory grace of an alpha, his presence commanding despite the casual way he emerged from the storm as if winter itself bent to his will. Alpha. Dominant. Dangerous. Lyra's Omega instincts warred with each other, submit to the alpha, but protect the pup at all costs. She backed against the bus shelter, clutching Ember tighter. Easy, the man said, his voice a rumble of barely contained power. I'm not here to hurt you. His scent reached her then, carried on the wind. Pine and snow and something wild that spoke of vast territories and absolute authority. This wasn't just any alpha. This was an alpha with a capital A. The kind that ruled packs, commanded territories, started wars. Stay back, Lyra warned, though they both knew she was no match for him. A starved Omega versus a prime alpha? She'd be lucky to last 5 seconds. But she'd fight anyway. For Ember, she'd fight anything. The alpha's eyes flicked to the child in her arms, and his entire demeanor changed. The predatory stillness became something else, recognition. Hope. Relief. Ember, he breathed, and the name was a prayer on his lips. The little girl stirred weakly. Uncle Darius? Uncle. Understanding crashed over Lyra like an avalanche. This child, this precious, abandoned pup, belonged to an alpha king. Because that's what he was, she realized. She could smell it on him now, the scent of a leader so powerful he ruled not just a pack, but multiple packs. A king among wolves. And she just claimed his niece. She's hurt, Lyra said quickly, preempting whatever demand he was about to make. Hypothermia, malnutrition, probably dehydration. She needs medical attention now. Darius moved closer, and Lyra fought every instinct that told her to bare her throat in submission. How long has she been with you? 5 minutes. I found her wandering in the storm. Lyra lifted her chin, meeting his eyes despite the insanity of challenging an alpha king. Where the hell have you been for the last? How long has she been missing? 2 years. The words were ground glass. Her parents were killed in a challenge. She disappeared during the chaos. We've been searching ever since. 2 years. This baby had been alone for 2 years. The pack that had her, Lyra said, remembering Ember's whispered words. They hurt her. Darkness flickered across Darius's features. Did they? It wasn't a question. Ember whimpered, her small body shivering violently despite the coats wrapped around her. Her breathing was becoming shallow, labored. We need to get her warm, Lyra said urgently. She's going into shock. Darius nodded curtly and stepped forward, arms outstretched to take his niece. But Ember clung to Lyra, her tiny fists tangling in the Omega's shirt. No, the child whispered. Want mommy. Want my Omega mommy. My Omega mommy. The words hung in the frigid air like a challenge, a claim, a declaration of war against the natural order of things. Alphas didn't share their pack members. Kings certainly didn't share royal blood with rogue Omegas found at bus stops. But Ember had chosen. And in the wolf world, a pup's choice of protector was sacred. Darius's eyes locked with Lyra's over the child's head. She saw calculation there, political maneuvering, the swift adaptation of a leader forced to work with unexpected variables. She also saw something else. Approval. His wolf approved of his niece's choice, even if his rational mind was probably screaming warnings. What's your name, Omega? Lyra. She lifted her chin higher. And I'm rogue. Not anymore. The words were a command, an edict, a complete upheaval of her world. My niece has claimed you. That makes you pack. I don't. She's dying, Darius interrupted, and Lyra looked down to see that Ember had gone limp in her arms, her breathing barely visible. Debate pack politics later. Save her now. He was right. Whatever complicated mess this was becoming, the only thing that mattered was the fragile life growing cold in her arms. My car is half a mile north, Darius said, already moving. Can you carry her that far? Lyra was exhausted, starved, at the end of her endurance. But she'd crawl through fire for this child. Yes. They moved through the storm like shadows, the Alpha King and the Rogue Omega united by the precious burden between them. Ember drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes calling for her mama, sometimes clinging to Lyra with desperate strength. By the time they reached the sleek SUV hidden among the trees, Lyra was stumbling with exhaustion. Darius helped her into the passenger seat, then climbed behind the wheel and started the engine, blasting the heat. There's a pack doctor an hour from here, he said, pulling out his phone. I'll call ahead, tell them we're coming. While he made the call, Lyra cradled Ember close, trying to warm the child with her own body heat. The little girl's skin was waxy pale, her lips still blue despite the heated air washing over them. Stay with me, sweetheart, Lyra whispered. Stay with mommy. The words slipped out without conscious thought, but they felt right. True. This child had claimed her, and she was claiming the child in return. Pack law. Heart law. Laws older than civilization itself. Darius finished his call and pulled onto the road, driving with controlled urgency through the storm. She'll live, he said, glancing at them through the rearview mirror. It wasn't a prediction. It was a decree from an Alpha King who'd already lost too much. Ember would live because he willed it, because Lyra demanded it, because sometimes the universe gave broken things a second chance. But as they drove through the night toward an uncertain future, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that saving Ember's life was only the beginning. The politics of an Alpha King claiming a Rogue Omega, a royal pup choosing a homeless protector, a king's bloodline mixing with the unwanted. This was how wars started. This was how worlds changed. And it had all begun with a 3-year-old wolf pup stumbling through a blizzard, following her nose toward the one person desperate enough to catch her when she fell. Chapter 2. The Northern Territory compound rose from the forest like something out of a fairy tale, if fairy tales included armed guards, reinforced gates, and enough security cameras to monitor a small country. Lyra pressed her face to the SUV window, watching the massive lodge grow larger as they approached. Stone and timber construction that spoke of old money and older power, sprawling across manicured grounds that probably cost more to maintain than most people earned in a lifetime. Welcome to the palace, Darius said dryly, noting her expression. Ember stirred weakly in Lyra's arms. The child's fever had broken during the drive, but she remained frighteningly pale, her breathing shallow. Every few minutes she'd whisper, "Mama," and press closer to Lyra's chest, as if afraid her newfound protector might disappear. It's not exactly what I expected, Lyra admitted, watching wolves in human form patrol the perimeter with military precision. More fortress than home. When you rule 5 packs and half the supernatural community wants you dead, home becomes fortress. Darius pulled up to a side entrance where several people waited. The main entrance is for show. This is where we actually live. A woman in scrubs hurried toward the car, Dr. Helena Martinez, based on Darius's earlier phone descriptions. Behind her stood a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes, flanked by 3 others in expensive suits. The council, Lyra realized. The wolves who helped Darius rule his kingdom and who were about to decide her fate. How is she? Dr. Martinez asked the moment Darius opened the passenger door. Weak, but responsive, Lyra replied, carefully lifting Ember from the car. Body temperature is normalizing, but she needs fluids and nutrition. Slowly, though. Her system can't handle too much at once. The doctor's eyebrows rose slightly. You have medical training? No, but I've seen hypothermia before. In other rogues who didn't make it through winter. Basic survival knowledge. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly and gestured toward the building. Let's get her inside. I've prepared the medical wing. As they moved toward the entrance, Ember's eyes fluttered open. She took one look at the unfamiliar faces surrounding them and let out a cry that made every wolf in the vicinity wince. Mama! Don't let them take me. Her tiny arms wrapped around Lyra's neck with surprising strength, her distress spiking through the air in waves of panicked pheromones. Several of the guards stepped forward instinctively, their protective instincts triggered by a pup in distress. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lyra soothed, rubbing circles on Ember's back. "No one's taking you anywhere. Mama's right here." The silver-haired man's eyes narrowed. Did that child just call a rogue Omega Mama? Darius's jaw tightened. "Council business can wait, Marcus. The child needs medical attention." "The child is the rightful heir to the Northern Territories," Marcus replied coldly. "Her associations are absolutely council business." Ember whimpered and burrowed deeper into Lyra's embrace. The scent of her fear was making every dominant wolf in the vicinity tense with the need to eliminate whatever was threatening a pup. "Enough," Darius commanded, his alpha authority washing over the group like a physical force. Medical wing. Now. Politics later. The medical wing was a study in efficiency and expense, equipment that belonged in a hospital, rooms designed for long-term care, and staff that moved with the precision of a trauma unit. Dr. Martinez led them to a private room decorated to look more like a child's bedroom than a medical facility. "Clever," Lyra murmured, noting the soft colors and stuffed animals strategically placed around the medical equipment. "Pups heal better when they're not afraid," Dr. Martinez replied, preparing in 4. "Can you get her on the bed?" "No." Ember clung tighter to Lyra. "Want to stay with Mama?" "The doctor needs to examine you, baby," Lyra said gently. "I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere." It took 20 minutes of coaxing, but they finally managed to get Ember settled on the examination table with Lyra sitting beside her, holding her hand. Dr. Martinez worked with practiced efficiency, drawing blood, checking vital signs, starting a carefully calibrated 4-drip. Malnutrition, dehydration, and stress-related growth delay, the doctor reported to Darius, who'd stationed himself near the door like a sentinel. "She should weigh at least 10 pounds more for her age. Her wolf is also underdeveloped, probably hasn't been able to shift properly due to her physical condition." "But she'll recover?" Darius asked. "Physically, yes. With proper nutrition and care, she should be fine within a few months." Dr. Martinez glanced at Ember, who was drifting off to sleep while clutching Lyra's hand. "Emotionally, that's more complicated. She's been through significant trauma. The bonding behavior with MS." Lyra supplied. "The bonding behavior with Lyra is actually healthy, given the circumstances. Pups need secure attachment to heal from trauma. Disrupting that bond now could set back her recovery significantly." Through the glass wall of the medical room, Lyra could see the council members gathering in the hallway, their expressions ranging from concerned to outright hostile. Marcus, in particular, kept shooting glances her way that made her skin crawl. "How significantly?" Darius asked. Dr. Martinez hesitated. "In severe cases, forced separation from a chosen caregiver can cause a pup to stop eating, stop speaking, even stop shifting. It's called attachment disruption syndrome, and it can be fatal." Fatal. The word hung in the air like a sword. "There has to be another way," Marcus said, having apparently overheard the conversation. He stepped into the room with the entitled authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "The child can bond with an appropriate caregiver. Someone vetted, someone with proper bloodlines." Ember's eyes snapped open at the sound of his voice, and she pressed closer to Lyra with a soft whimper. "She's already bonded," Lyra said quietly. "Pup bonds aren't interchangeable." "You're a rogue," Marcus replied dismissively. "An unknown quantity with unknown loyalties. Do you really think we'd entrust the heir to the Northern Territories to someone who could disappear at any moment?" Lyra's temper flared, but she kept her voice level for Ember's sake. "I wouldn't disappear. Not from her. Forgive me if I don't take the word of a rogue Omega." "Marcus." Darius's voice carried a warning that made the temperature in the room drop several degrees. But Marcus was undeterred. "She could be working for our enemies, Darius. She could be a plant, positioned perfectly to intercept the child when she wandered from her captors. This entire scenario is suspiciously convenient." You think I arranged to be homeless and starving at a bus stop in the middle of nowhere on the off chance a missing royal pup would stumble out of a blizzard? Lyra couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. Stranger things have happened in pack politics. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps this discussion could continue outside? The patient needs rest. But Ember was already stirring, made anxious by the tension in the room. Mama, she whispered, her small hand tightening on Lyra's. I'm here, sweetheart. The mean man wants to take me away from you. Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus's face flushed red while Darius looked like he was considering violence. No one is taking you anywhere, Lyra said firmly. I promise. It was a promise she had no authority to make, and everyone in the room knew it. But Ember relaxed slightly, her trust in her chosen protector absolute. We need genetic confirmation, Marcus announced. Blood work to prove paternity. I can have results within the hour, Dr. Martinez said. Though honestly, just look at her. She has Darius's brother's eyes and facial structure. She's definitely pack bloodline. Scientific confirmation, Marcus insisted. We need legal documentation for the succession courts. While the adults argued, Lyra watched Ember's face grow paler with exhaustion. The child needed sleep, needed peace, needed stability. Instead, she was getting political maneuvering and power plays. She needs rest, Lyra interjected. Whatever you need to discuss, can it wait until tomorrow? The council meets tonight, Marcus replied coldly. The rogue situation needs to be resolved immediately. I have a name, Lyra snapped, her patience finally fraying. And I'm sitting right here. If you're going to discuss my fate, at least have the courtesy to include me in the conversation. Darius stepped forward before Marcus could respond. You're right. This should be a private discussion between the interested parties. Interested parties. Not pack members, not equals, not people with actual rights in this situation. Just interested parties. I'll stay with Ember while you talk, Dr. Martinez offered. She shouldn't be left alone right now. Lyra looked down at the sleeping child, her heart clenching. She'd promised not to leave, but if staying meant putting Ember in political danger. Go, Dr. Martinez said softly, understanding her dilemma. I'll be here. Nothing will happen to her while you're gone. The conference room was as intimidating as the rest of the compound, a massive table surrounded by leather chairs, portraits of previous Alpha Kings glowering down from the walls. Marcus took his seat at Darius's right hand, while the other council members arranged themselves with calculated precision. Lyra was offered a chair at the far end of the table, physically separated from the real power in the room. Let's start with the obvious, Marcus began without preamble. You're rogue. What pack cast you out, and why? Straight for the throat. Lyra had expected this, but it still stung. The Silverwood pack. I was cast out for challenging their treatment of Omegas. Challenging how? Heat flooded Lyra's cheeks, but she forced herself to meet Marcus's gaze. I refused to accept an arranged mating with an abusive alpha. When I spoke out about his treatment of other Omegas, I was labeled a troublemaker and exiled. So you admit to being disobedient and disruptive to pack hierarchy. I admit to having a backbone. One of the other council members, a woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, leaned forward. What have you been doing for the 6 months since your exile? Surviving. Moving from town to town, taking whatever work I could find. Lyra's jaw tightened. It's not easy being a lone Omega in human cities. We're not exactly built for solitary living. Yet you managed, Darius observed. Barely. Marcus shuffled through a folder of papers. No fixed address, no steady employment, no references. You're asking us to trust the heir to the Northern Territories to someone with no stability and no accountability. I'm not asking for anything, Lyra replied. I didn't choose this situation. Ember did. Your pack law says a pup's choice of protector is sacred, doesn't it? The council members exchanged glances. Clearly, they'd hoped she wouldn't know that particular law. Pack law applies to pack members, Marcus said smoothly. You're not pack. Darius said. Alpha Darius was speaking emotionally in a crisis situation. Legal pack membership requires proper procedures, vetting, and council approval. Lyra looked at Darius, who was studying his hands with intense concentration. No help there. He was letting his council play the bad guys while he maintained plausible deniability. Smart politics. Terrible for her. So what exactly are you proposing? She asked. Supervised visitation, the sharp-eyed woman replied. You may see the child under guard, in controlled circumstances, while she's gradually transitioned to appropriate caregivers. And if she refuses the transition? If she gets sick from the separation? Marcus waved a dismissive hand. Children adapt. She'll form new attachments. She's not a pet you can rehome, Lyra snapped. She's a traumatized little girl who's already lost everything. You want to take away the one person she feels safe with? We want to protect the future of our pack, Marcus replied coldly. That means keeping royal bloodlines away from unstable influences. Unstable influences. Lyra tasted the words like poison. Is that what you call someone who saved a dying child? We call it what it is, an unacceptable risk. The door to the conference room burst open, and Dr. Martinez hurried in, her face flushed with urgency. She's awake and asking for Lyra, the doctor announced without preamble. Her blood pressure is spiking, and she's showing signs of severe distress. If we can't calm her down, I'm going to have to sedate her. Sedate her? Lyra was on her feet instantly. She's 3 years old and already traumatized. You want to drug her into compliance? I want to keep her alive, Dr. Martinez replied sharply. Her heart rate is approaching dangerous levels. Through the walls of the conference room, they could all hear it, the high, keening cry of a pup in distress. The sound made every wolf in the building restless, their protective instincts triggered by a child's pain. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Marcus muttered. Emotional manipulation. She's not manipulating anyone, Lyra snarled, her patience finally snapping. She's a baby who's scared and alone and calling for the one person who's shown her kindness in God knows how long. The crying intensified, and several of the council members winced. Pup distress calls were designed by nature to be impossible to ignore, to compel immediate protective response from any adult wolf within hearing. Bring her here, Darius said suddenly. Darius, no, Marcus protested. We can't set precedent. Bring her here, Darius repeated, his alpha authority cutting through the objections like a blade. Now. 5 minutes later, Dr. Martinez carried a sobbing Ember into the conference room. The moment the child saw Lyra, she launched herself from the doctor's arms and ran to her chosen protector. Mama. I thought you left me. Never, Lyra whispered, gathering the small body close. I told you I wouldn't leave you. Ember's sobs gradually quieted as she settled in Lyra's lap, her tiny hands fisted in the Omega's shirt. The change in the room's atmosphere was immediate, where there had been tension and political maneuvering, now there was the primal peace that came from a protected pup. Marcus looked like he'd been force-fed lemons. This proves nothing except that the child has formed an unhealthy attachment. Attachment, Dr. Martinez corrected firmly, that is currently keeping her alive. Her vital signs have returned to normal now that she's with Lyra. Ember looked around the conference room with wide, curious eyes, taking in the intimidating portraits and formal atmosphere. When her gaze landed on Marcus, she pressed closer to Lyra. He's the mean man, she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. He's not mean, sweetheart. He's just concerned about keeping you safe. You keep me safe. You're my mama now. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water, creating ripples that would reshape everything. In the wolf world, family bonds were sacred, inviolable, written in blood and breath and choice. Ember had made her choice clear. This is impossible, Marcus said flatly. We cannot allow a rogue Omega to claim royal bloodline. She hasn't claimed anything, Darius said quietly. The child has claimed her. The child is 3 years old and traumatized. She doesn't understand the political implications. Since when do politics supersede PAC law? Lyra challenged. Since when do convenience and expedience matter more than the well-being of a pup? Marcus's eyes flashed with anger. Since that pup became the heir to territories worth billions of dollars and the future of 5 allied PACs. She's still a little girl who wants her mama. You are not her mother. Biologically, no. But in every way that matters. Lyra looked down at Ember, who was starting to fall asleep again in the safety of her chosen protector's arms. Yes, I am. The room fell silent except for the soft sound of Ember's breathing. Every person there understood the significance of what had just been said. Lyra had just claimed a royal pup, publicly and unequivocally. In PAC law, that made her family. It also made her a target for anyone who wanted control over the heir to the Northern Territories. You have no idea what you've just done, Marcus said softly, his voice deadly with promise. I know exactly what I've done, Lyra replied. I've chosen to protect an innocent child. If that makes me your enemy, so be it. Darius stood, his massive frame commanding attention. The child needs stability and security above all else. The council will reconvene tomorrow to discuss arrangements. It wasn't a solution, but it was a reprieve. Lyra gathered Ember closer, breathing in her scent of innocence and trust and hope. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new politics, new attempts to separate them. But tonight, a little girl would sleep safely in her chosen mama's arms. And sometimes, that was enough. Chapter 3. Dawn came too early and brought visitors Darius didn't want to see. Lyra woke to the sound of helicopters landing on the compound's helipad, their rotors beating like war drums against the morning sky. She'd spent the night in the medical wing, curled on a chair beside Ember's bed, refusing all offers of more comfortable accommodations. Trust was earned, not given, and she wasn't about to let the child wake up alone in a strange place. Mama? Ember stirred, her small hand reaching for Lyra's. What's that noise? Just helicopters, sweetheart. Probably important PAC business. Lyra smoothed the child's dark hair, noting with relief that her color was much better this morning. Dr. Martinez's 4 fluids and careful nutrition plan were working. Are they here to see me? Too perceptive for a 3-year-old. Maybe. But you don't have to see anyone you don't want to see. Ember nodded solemnly, then brightened. Can we have breakfast with Uncle Darius? I want pancakes. Before Lyra could answer, a knock sounded on the door. Dr. Martinez entered, followed by Darius, who looked like he'd been awake all night. His usually immaculate appearance was rumpled, his jaw dark with stubble, and his eyes held the weight of decisions that could reshape the supernatural world. Good morning, little wolf, he said softly, and Ember beamed at him. Uncle Darius. Mama says you might have important PAC business, but I want pancakes. Can we have pancakes together? Something painful flickered across Darius's face. I'd love that, Em, but we have some visitors who want to meet you first. Do I have to? I'm afraid so. But Lyra will be with you the whole time. Lyra caught the careful phrasing. Not your mama or Mama Lyra, just Lyra. Political distancing. Her stomach clenched with understanding. Who are these visitors? She asked. Alpha Gregory from the Moonstone Pack, Alpha Miranda from Silver Fong, and Elder Catherine representing the Northwestern Tribunal. Darius's voice was carefully neutral, but she caught the tension underneath. They want to congratulate us on finding Ember. Congratulate. Right. Lyra had been rogue long enough to recognize a territorial display when she heard one. These alphas weren't here to offer welcome gifts and warm wishes. How did they find out so quickly? She asked. Word travels fast in PAC politics. Especially when it involves missing royal heirs and succession rights. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat diplomatically. Ember's strong enough for a brief meeting, but she'll need rest afterward. Her recovery is still fragile. Understood. Darius crouched beside Ember's bed, his expression gentle despite the storm brewing behind his eyes. These are important alphas who knew your parents, Em. They want to make sure you're okay. Will they try to take me away from Mama? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Darius's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No one's taking you anywhere you don't want to go, he said carefully. It wasn't exactly a promise, and Lyra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. If these visiting alphas represented the kind of political pressure she suspected, Darius might not be able to keep that statement true. An hour later, they were assembled in the main reception hall, a vast space designed to intimidate visiting dignitaries with its soaring ceilings, ancient tapestries, and strategic display of weapons that predated modern civilization. Lyra felt distinctly out of place in her borrowed clothes, a rogue omega among royalty. Ember, however, seemed fascinated by the grandeur. She stayed close to Lyra's side but craned her neck to take in every detail, her natural curiosity stronger than her shyness. The visiting alphas made an impressive display of power. Alpha Gregory was a mountain of a man with silver hair and calculating eyes. Alpha Miranda moved with predatory grace, her red hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Elder Catherine appeared to be in her 70s, but the authority radiating from her suggested she could level buildings with a disapproving glance. So this is the lost princess, Alpha Gregory said, his voice carrying across the hall like a bell. She has her father's eyes. Indeed, Elder Catherine agreed, studying Ember with uncomfortable intensity. The bloodline is unmistakable. Ember pressed closer to Lyra, overwhelmed by the attention. Mama, she whispered, they're staring at me. I know, baby. Just remember, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Alpha Miranda's sharp gaze fixed on Lyra with laser focus. And you must be the rogue who found her. How fortuitous. The word dripped with suspicion and thinly veiled accusation. Lyra lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. I prefer lucky. For both of us. Lucky indeed, Gregory agreed, though his tone suggested he found the coincidence anything but. Tell me, MS. Lyra. Just Lyra? No family name? No pack designation? Exiles don't get to keep family names, Lyra replied evenly. Surely you know that, Alpha Gregory. A muscle ticked in Gregory's jaw. He didn't like being reminded of uncomfortable truths, especially by someone he clearly considered beneath his notice. Elder Catherine stepped forward, her ancient eyes missing nothing. The child seems attached to you. Children bond with those who show them kindness, Lyra said carefully. It's natural. Natural, perhaps. But hardly appropriate, given the circumstances. What circumstances would those be? The circumstances of royal succession, territorial inheritance, and political stability, Miranda interjected smoothly. Surely even a rogue understands that the heir to the Northern Territories requires proper guidance and protection. She has protection, Lyra said, her temper beginning to fray. She has family who loves her and pack members who would die for her. She has a traumatized attachment to an unstable caregiver, Gregory corrected coldly. It's understandable, given her ordeal, but hardly sustainable long-term. Ember looked up at Lyra with worried eyes. Mama, what does unstable mean? It means they think I'm not good enough to take care of you, Lyra said gently, deciding honesty was better than sugarcoating the adult's political maneuvering. But you are good enough, Ember said with the fierce certainty of a child. You saved me. You kept me warm. You promised not to leave me. Elder Catherine's expression softened fractionally. Child, no one doubts this woman's good intentions. But intentions aren't enough when it comes to royal responsibilities. What royal responsibilities? Ember asked, genuine confusion in her voice. The adults exchanged glances. How did you explain territorial politics, succession law, and marriage alliances to a 3-year-old who just wanted her mama and pancakes? When you grow up, Darius said carefully, you'll inherit your father's territories. That means you'll be responsible for protecting and leading thousands of pack members. Like you do? Yes, like I do. Ember considered this with the serious expression of a child processing grown-up concepts. Will Mama help me? Another loaded silence. Lyra felt the weight of 6 pairs of eyes on her, each gaze carrying different expectations and fears. We'll see, sweetheart, she said finally. The Silverwood pack has expressed interest in fostering the child, Miranda announced, her timing calculated for maximum impact. As a neutral territory with strong educational resources and established bloodlines. Lyra's blood ran cold. The Silverwood pack, her former pack. The same wolves who'd cast her out for refusing an abusive mating. They wanted Ember, and they wanted to separate her from the rogue Omega who'd saved her life. Absolutely not, Lyra said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. You don't have authority to refuse on the child's behalf, Gregory pointed out. I have the authority of someone who won't let a little girl be used as a political pawn. Everything about royal bloodlines is political, Elder Catherine said quietly. The sooner you accept that, the less painful this will be for everyone involved. Ember tugged on Lyra's shirt. Mama, I don't want to go to Silverwood. I want to stay with you and Uncle Darius. I know, baby. The child's preferences are noted, Miranda said dismissively. But hardly determinative. Children often want things that aren't in their best interests. Like safety and love and stability? Lyra shot back. Like remaining with caregivers who lack the resources and training to prepare them for their future responsibilities. Darius had remained silent throughout the exchange, his face a mask of diplomatic neutrality. But Lyra caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. He was fighting his own battles, torn between political necessity and personal conviction. Perhaps, Elder Catherine suggested, we could arrange a trial period. The child could visit the Silverwood territory, meet potential foster families, become accustomed to proper pack hierarchies. Over my dead body, Lyra snarled, her Omega instincts flaring to protective fury. That could be arranged, Gregory said with silky menace. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees as Darius's alpha power flooded the space like a tsunami. You will not threaten anyone under my protection. Of course not, Gregory backpedaled smoothly. I merely meant that rogue Omegas are fragile. Accidents happen. Ember whimpered and pressed against Lyra's legs, frightened by the sudden tension and barely contained violence crackling through the air. I think, Elder Catherine said diplomatically, this conversation has become somewhat heated. Perhaps we should continue discussions without the child present. No, Ember said firmly, surprising everyone. I want to stay with Mama. She doesn't leave me with strangers. We're not strangers, child. We're pack leaders who want what's best for you. Mama wants what's best for me too. And she smells like love. You smell like... Ember wrinkled her tiny nose. Like wanting things. Out of the mouths of babes. Even a traumatized 3-year-old could sense the political hunger radiating from the visiting alphas. Children's perceptions can be unreliable, Miranda said stiffly. Children's instincts are usually dead accurate, Lyra countered. They haven't learned to lie to themselves yet. Before anyone could respond, a new complication arrived in the form of Marcus and 2 unfamiliar wolves, a stunning woman with platinum blonde hair and a man who screamed lawyer from his expensive suit to his briefcase. Alpha Darius, Marcus announced formally, may I present Selena Whitmore of the Eastern Alliance and her legal counsel, James Morrison. Selena. Darius's betrothed. Lyra felt something twist painfully in her chest as the beautiful woman glided forward with perfect composure and regal bearing. This was what an Alpha King's mate was supposed to look like, polished, educated, politically advantageous. Everything Lyra wasn't. Darius, Selena said warmly, rising on her toes to kiss his cheek. I came as soon as I heard about your niece. How wonderful that she's been found safe. Her gaze swept over Ember with genuine warmth before settling on Lyra with curious assessment. No hostility, no immediate territorial response. Either she was very good at hiding her feelings, or she genuinely didn't see a rogue Omega as a threat. And you must be Lyra, Selena continued graciously. Darius told me how you saved Ember's life. The pack owes you a tremendous debt. Lyra blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected kindness. Thank you. Selena represents the Eastern Alliance's interests in this matter, Marcus explained with barely concealed satisfaction. As Darius's intended mate, she has legitimate concerns about the succession and the child's welfare. Translation: Selena had political backing to challenge Lyra's position, and Marcus was more than happy to use her as ammunition. But Selena surprised everyone by kneeling to Ember's level with genuine warmth. "Hello, sweetheart. I've heard so much about you. You're even prettier than your pictures." Ember studied the elegant woman with solemn curiosity. "Are you Uncle Darius's girlfriend?" "Something like that," Selena said with a gentle smile. "Do you make him happy?" The question caught everyone off guard. Selena glanced at Darius with something unreadable in her expression. "I hope so," she said carefully. Ember's nose wrinkled thoughtfully. "You smell nice, but you smell sad too. Like Uncle Darius smells sad. And Mama smells sad when she thinks I'm not listening." She looked around the room with the devastating honesty of childhood. Why does everyone smell sad when they should smell happy? "I'm safe now. That should make everyone happy." The silence that followed was deafening. A 3-year-old had just pointed out the fundamental flaw in all their political maneuvering. In trying to secure the best possible future for her, they were making everyone miserable in the present. "Children are so perceptive," Elder Catherine murmured, and for the first time, her voice held genuine emotion rather than calculated authority. "Too perceptive," Gregory muttered. Lawyer James Morrison chose that moment to clear his throat and produce a thick folder from his briefcase. "If I may, there are legal documents that require immediate attention. Custody papers, succession documentation, and territorial inheritance forms." "Now?" Darius asked sharply. "The sooner these matters are formalized, the better for all parties involved," Morrison replied smoothly. "Uncertainty breeds instability, and instability breeds challenges to legitimate authority." Lyra felt the walls closing in around her. Legal documents meant official decisions, permanent arrangements, the end of any hope that love and bond and choice might triumph over politics and expedience. "I think," she said quietly, "Ember and I need some air." Without waiting for permission, she lifted the child into her arms and headed for the French doors that led to the garden. Behind her, she could hear the immediate explosion of voices, some protesting her departure, others demanding she be stopped, Darius's voice cutting through the chaos with alpha authority. But she kept walking. Outside, the morning air was crisp and clean, scented with pine and the promise of snow. Ember relaxed against her shoulder, relieved to be away from the political pressure cooker. "Mama, are they going to make me go away?" Lyra's heart clenched. "I don't know, sweetheart. They're trying to figure out what's best for you. But I already know what's best for me. I want to stay with you and Uncle Darius. Why can't grown-ups understand simple things? Why indeed?" Lyra settled on a stone bench overlooking the forest, holding Ember close as she tried to process the morning's revelations. The visiting alphas wanted to take Ember away from her. Darius was caught between his heart and his political obligations. His beautiful, kind fiancée was everything Lyra could never be. And in the middle of it all was a little girl who just wanted her family to be happy. "Mama?" Ember's small voice interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Yes, baby? Do you like Uncle Darius?" The question was innocent enough, but something in Ember's tone suggested deeper currents. "Of course I like him. He's been very kind to us." "No, I mean, do you like him? Like how the prince likes the princess in my fairy tale book?" Heat flooded Lyra's cheeks. "Sweetheart, that's complicated. Grown-ups always say things are complicated when they really mean, yes, but I'm scared." Ember pulled back to study Lyra's face with disconcerting directness. "You smell different when Uncle Darius is around. And he smells different when you're around. Happy scared wanting smells. Happy scared wanting." Leave it to a child to sum up the complex tangle of emotions Lyra had been trying to deny. "Uncle Darius is going to marry Selena," Lyra said gently. She's a very nice lady who will make him happy. But he doesn't smell happy wanting with her. He smells polite. Like when I have to eat vegetables even though I don't want to. Before Lyra could figure out how to respond to that devastating observation, footsteps crunched on the gravel path behind them. She turned to find Darius approaching, alone, his expression unreadable. The councils decided to reconvene this afternoon, he said without preamble. They want formal custody arrangements decided by tomorrow. And what do you want? Lyra asked. He was quiet for a long moment, studying the distant mountains with the weight of kingdoms on his shoulders. I want what's best for Ember. That's not what I asked. More silence. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, I want the impossible. Ember wiggled down from Lyra's lap and went to her uncle, wrapping her small arms around his legs. Uncle Darius, why do you smell so sad? Don't you want me and Mama to stay? Darius lifted her into his arms, and Lyra caught the flash of pain that crossed his features. More than anything, little wolf. But sometimes what we want and what we can have are different things. Why? Because the world is complicated, and I have responsibilities to a lot of people. Ember considered this with the gravity of a child trying to understand adult logic. But if you're the Alpha King, can't you make the rules? I can make some rules. But some rules are bigger than me. That's stupid. Despite everything, Darius smiled. You're not wrong. He set Ember down and turned to Lyra, his eyes holding conversations they couldn't have allowed. The Silverwood Pack's offer is legitimate. They can provide her with education, training, proper pack socialization. Everything she'll need to rule territory someday. Everything except love and security and the one person she's bonded to. Love doesn't always win, Lyra. Sometimes duty has to come first. And sometimes duty is just an excuse for cowardice. The words hung between them like a challenge. Darius's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny the accusation. The council meets at 2, he said finally. You should be there. Whatever they decide, you have the right to speak for yourself. He walked away without another word, leaving Lyra alone with Ember and the growing certainty that the afternoon would change everything, and not necessarily for the better. Mama, Ember said quietly, watching her uncle's retreating figure. Are you going to fight for us? Lyra looked down at the little girl who'd wandered out of a blizzard and straight into her heart, then at the imposing compound that represented power and politics and everything she'd never been part of. Yes, she said firmly. I'm going to fight for us. Even if it meant going to war with the most powerful wolves in the country. Even if it meant facing her own past and the pack that had cast her out. Even if it meant losing everything all over again. Some things were worth fighting for. And Ember, bright, brave, beautiful Ember, was worth everything. Chapter 4. The engagement party was supposed to be a celebration of political unity, a formal announcement that would secure the Northern Territory's alliance with the Eastern Packs and ensure stability for the next generation. Instead, it was shaping up to be the most spectacular disaster in recent pack history. Lyra stood at the window of the guest suite she'd been assigned, far from the main royal wing, she'd noticed, watching servants transform the compound's main courtyard into something out of a fairy tale. White silk draping fluttered from ancient oak trees, crystal chandeliers hung from temporary pavilions, and enough flowers to stock a botanical garden were being arranged into elaborate displays that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. 3 days had passed since the morning council meeting. 3 days of formal custody hearings, political negotiations, and increasingly desperate attempts to separate Ember from her chosen protector. Each attempt had ended the same way, with Ember's heartbroken sobs echoing through the compound until someone gave in and brought Lyra back. The child was currently napping on the suite's oversized bed, exhausted from another morning of socialization activities with appropriate pack children. Selena had organized the playdate with the best of intentions, hoping to help Ember adjust to pack life and form friendships with children from suitable families. It had lasted exactly 47 minutes before Ember started asking for Mama and worked herself into such a state that Dr. Martinez had to be called in to check her blood pressure. She's not being deliberately difficult, the doctor had explained to Selena afterward, her voice carefully professional. Separation anxiety is common in traumatized children. Forced interactions with strangers can actually set back her recovery. Selena had accepted the explanation graciously, but Lyra had caught the flash of frustration in her eyes. The future Luna of the Northern Territories wasn't accustomed to being rejected, especially by a 3-year-old whose loyalty she desperately needed. A soft knock on the door interrupted Lyra's brooding. She opened it to find Selena herself, resplendent in a sage green dress that probably cost more than Lyra had earned in her entire life as a rogue. Her platinum hair was styled in an elegant updo, and diamonds sparkled at her throat, the picture of aristocratic perfection. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Selena said with practiced warmth. "I wanted to speak with you before tonight's festivities." Lyra glanced back at the sleeping child, then stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind her. "She's resting." The morning was challenging. "Yes, I heard." Selena's smile remained perfect, but something sharp flickered behind her eyes. "That's actually what I wanted to discuss." They walked in silence to a nearby sitting room, one of dozens scattered throughout the massive compound. This one was decorated in muted blues and grays, designed to be soothing and non-threatening. The kind of room where difficult conversations were meant to happen civilly. "You must know," Selena began once they were seated, "that tonight is incredibly important for pack stability. The alphas attending represent territories from across the continent. Their support is crucial for maintaining peace." "I understand the political implications," Lyra replied carefully. "Do you?" Selena's mask slipped slightly, revealing the steel underneath. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you're deliberately undermining the very alliances that keep thousands of pack members safe. I'm protecting a traumatized child. You're enabling her trauma by refusing to let her adapt to appropriate pack structures." Lyra felt her temper spike. Appropriate according to whom? The same alphas who want to use her as a political tool? The same alphas who've kept the peace for 3 generations, Selena corrected coldly. The same alliances that prevent territory wars and protect innocent pack members from violence. And if Ember's happiness is the price of that peace? Then she pays it, like every other royal child in history. Selena's composure cracked further, revealing the desperation underneath. "Do you think I wanted an arranged mating? Do you think any of us get to choose love over duty?" The admission hung between them like a sword. Lyra studied Selena's perfect facade and saw something she hadn't expected: genuine pain. This woman wasn't a power-hungry schemer. She was another victim of the political machine, just one with better clothes and more training. "That doesn't make it right," Lyra said quietly. "Right and wrong are luxuries for people who don't have entire territories depending on their decisions." Selena stood, pacing to the window with agitated grace. "I need Ember's acceptance, Lyra. Not want, need. If the future queen rejects the future Luna publicly, it destabilizes everything Darius has built. So this is about your position. This is about preventing war." Selena spun around, her control finally snapping. "There are alphas circling like vultures, waiting for any sign of weakness. If they think Darius can't control his own household, if they see his niece, the heir, rejecting his chosen mate." She didn't need to finish the thought. Lyra understood pack politics well enough to know that perceived weakness could trigger challenges, territorial disputes, even outright war. "What do you want me to do?" Lyra asked. "Convince her to accept me. Help her understand that I'm not her enemy." "And if she refuses?" Selena's jaw tightened. "Then you'll have to choose between her temporary happiness and her long-term survival. Because if tonight goes badly, there won't be anywhere safe for either of you." Before Lyra could respond, the door burst open and Ember stumbled in, rubbing sleep from her eyes and clutching a stuffed wolf Dr. Martinez had given her. "Mama? I had a bad dream." She stopped short when she saw Selena, her small body tensing with wariness. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lyra said, opening her arms. Ember ran to her immediately, climbing into her lap with the desperate need of a child seeking comfort. "Just a dream. You're safe." Selena watched the interaction with carefully hidden longing. "Hello, Ember." Did you sleep well? Ember buried her face in Lyra's shoulder, pointedly ignoring the greeting. Ember, Lyra said gently, Selena asked you a question. It's polite to answer. A muffled, I slept okay, emerged from the vicinity of Lyra's collarbone. I'm glad to hear that. Selena knelt beside the chair, bringing herself to Ember's eye level. I wanted to ask if you'd like to help me get ready for tonight's party. I have some beautiful dresses, and I thought you might like to choose which one I should wear. It was a clever approach, giving Ember control and making her feel important. Most children would have been delighted by the opportunity to play dress-up with a real princess. Ember was not most children. She peeked out from Lyra's shoulder, studied Selena with solemn eyes, then shook her head firmly. No thank you. I want to stay with Mama. The party is going to be very exciting, Selena persisted, her smile becoming slightly strained. There will be music and dancing and cake. Don't like parties, Ember interrupted. Too loud. Too many strangers. But these aren't strangers, sweetheart. They're pack members. Family. They're not my family. Ember's voice was small but determined. Mama is my family. Uncle Darius is my family. You're. She paused, searching for words. You're nice, but you're not family. The rejection hit Selena like a physical blow. Lyra saw her flinch before the diplomatic mask snapped back into place. Well, Selena said with forced brightness, perhaps you'll change your mind after tonight. Sometimes it takes time to feel comfortable with new people. I won't change my mind, Ember said with the absolute certainty of childhood. Mama smells like home. You smell like. She wrinkled her nose thoughtfully. Like trying too hard. Out of the mouths of babes. Even a traumatized 3-year-old could sense Selena's desperation beneath the polished exterior. Selena's composure finally cracked completely. She stood abruptly, her face flushed with frustration and hurt. This is impossible. She won't even give me a chance. She's been through trauma, Lyra said quietly. It's not personal. Everything about royal politics is personal. Selena moved toward the door, then stopped, her shoulders rigid with tension. Tonight's engagement ceremony begins at 7. The entire supernatural community will be watching. If Ember causes a scene. She's 3 years old, Lyra said firmly. If she causes a scene, it's because the adults around her have failed to create a safe environment. Safe environments are luxuries we can't afford. Selena's voice was bitter with defeat. Not when survival is at stake. She left without another word, her elegant heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown to disaster. Ember remained curled in Lyra's lap, her small body tense with anxiety. Mama, she smells scared. And angry. And sad. I know, baby. Is it my fault? Lyra's heart clenched. No, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. The grown-ups are trying to figure out complicated things, and sometimes that makes everyone feel scared and sad. I don't want to make Uncle Darius sad. You're not making anyone sad. You're just being honest about your feelings. Ember was quiet for a long moment, processing with the gravity of a child carrying burdens too heavy for her small shoulders. Do I have to go to the party? Lyra wished she could say no. Wished she could bundle Ember up and disappear into the night, away from political machinations and arranged matings and the crushing weight of royal expectations. But she'd learned enough about pack politics to know that running would only make things worse. Ember's absence tonight would be seen as an insult to the assembled alphas, a rejection of pack authority that could have far-reaching consequences. Yes, sweetheart. But I'll be with you the whole time. Promise? Promise. As the afternoon wore on, the compound transformed into something out of a dream. Staff members scurried through the halls carrying flowers, linens, and enough food to feed an army. The sound of musicians setting up drifted through the windows, along with the rumble of arriving vehicles as pack leaders from across the continent converged on the northern territories. Lyra had been provided with appropriate attire for the evening, a simple but elegant navy dress that fit perfectly despite no one asking for her measurements. Pack efficiency at work. She helped Ember into a miniature version in pale pink, complete with tiny ballet flats and a flower crown that made her look like a fairy tale princess. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Lyra said, adjusting the flower crown with gentle fingers. "Do I look like a queen?" The question caught Lyra off guard. "What made you think about being a queen?" "Uncle Darius said someday I'll be responsible for lots of pack members, like he is." "That means I'll be a queen, right?" Lyra's throat tightened. How did you explain to a 3-year-old that her entire life had been planned out for her before she was old enough to understand what choice meant? "Maybe," she said carefully. "But that's a long time from now. For now, you just get to be Ember." "But what if I don't want to be a queen? What if I just want to stay with you and Uncle Darius and be a regular little girl?" "What if indeed? Then we'll figure it out together." By 7 o'clock, the main courtyard was packed with the most powerful wolves in North America. Lyra recognized some faces from news reports and pack publications: alphas who controlled territories larger than some countries, elders whose decisions could start or prevent wars, business leaders whose corporations employed thousands of humans who never knew their bosses weren't entirely human. The Northern Territory's inner circle formed a receiving line near the main pavilion. Darius stood at the center in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, every inch the powerful Alpha King. Beside him, Selena was radiant in silver silk, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists like captured starlight. They looked perfect together. Matched. Like they'd stepped out of a pack magazine spread titled, "Power Couples of the Supernatural World." "Mama," Ember whispered, pressing close to Lyra's side as they approached the receiving line. "There are so many people." "I know, baby. Just stay close to me." The assembled alphas watched their approach with varying degrees of curiosity, calculation, and barely concealed hostility. Lyra caught whispered conversations as they passed, speculation about the rogue Omega, bets on how long she'd last, pointed comments about appropriate pack hierarchies. She lifted her chin and kept walking. Let them whisper. She'd faced worse than political gossip. When they reached the receiving line, Darius stepped forward with a formal smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present my niece, Ember, heir to the Northern Territories." A ripple of polite applause went through the crowd. Ember shrank against Lyra's legs, overwhelmed by the attention. "And this is Lyra," Darius continued, his voice carefully neutral, "who saved Ember's life and has been caring for her during her recovery." More polite applause, though significantly less enthusiastic. The distinction was clear: Ember was the honored guest, Lyra was merely the help. Selena stepped forward with practiced grace, her smile warm and welcoming despite the morning's tension. "Ember, darling, you look absolutely lovely. Would you like to meet some of the other pack children? I've arranged a special table just for the little ones." Ember's grip on Lyra's hand tightened. "I want to stay with Mama." "Of course," Selena said smoothly, though her smile flickered slightly. "Perhaps later." Alpha Gregory appeared at Selena's shoulder, his bulk imposing even in formal wear. "The children's table has been prepared with special activities," he announced loudly enough for the nearby alphas to hear. "Age-appropriate entertainment for our youngest pack members." Translation: Ember should know her place and stay with the children while the adults conducted important business. "Thank you for thinking of her," Lyra said diplomatically, "but Ember prefers to stay close to me in new situations." "Surely a child should learn to interact with her peers," Gregory pressed, his tone suggesting that Lyra's parenting choices were somehow deficient. "She will, when she's ready." "And when might that be?" "The child is 3 years old, not an infant." Lyra felt her temper rising, but before she could respond, Ember stepped forward with surprising courage. "I don't want to sit at the children's table," she announced, her small voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet courtyard. "I want to sit with Mama and Uncle Darius." A murmur went through the crowd. Royal children didn't typically make demands at formal events, especially not in front of assembled alphas. "Sweetheart," Selena said with forced patience, "the children's table will be much more fun. There are games and..." "No." Ember's voice was small but determined. "I want Mama." The murmur grew louder. This wasn't going according to anyone's script. Elder Catherine materialized from the crowd, her ancient eyes assessing the situation with surgical precision. Perhaps the child would be more comfortable in a quieter environment. Formal events can be overwhelming for the young. It was a diplomatic way of suggesting Ember should be removed before she caused further disruption. But Ember, with the perverse timing of a tired 3-year-old, chose that moment to have a complete meltdown. "I don't want to go away," she wailed, her voice rising to a pitch that made every wolf in the vicinity wince. "I want to stay with Mama. Why does everyone want to take me away from Mama?" The sophisticated political gathering suddenly found itself dealing with a sobbing toddler whose distress calls were triggering every protective instinct in the assembled pack members. Conversations stopped. Servers froze mid-step. The musicians faltered into silence. "It's okay, sweetheart," Lyra murmured, kneeling to gather Ember into her arms. "No one's taking you anywhere." "They are." Ember sobbed against her shoulder. "They keep trying to make me go away from you. I don't want to go to the children's table. I don't want to live with strangers. I just want you and Uncle Darius." The words carried clearly across the silent courtyard, reaching every ear present. In front of the most powerful alphas in North America, the heir to the Northern Territories had just publicly rejected the entire political establishment in favor of a rogue Omega. Lyra felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, the pressure of political implications she could barely fathom. This wasn't just a child's tantrum, it was a declaration of loyalty that could reshape territorial politics. "I think," she said quietly, standing with Ember still clinging to her, "we need some air." But as she turned to leave, Ember's voice rang out one more time, delivering the final blow to Selena's carefully orchestrated evening. "I don't want her to marry Uncle Darius," she declared, pointing at Selena with the devastating honesty of childhood. "I want Mama to marry Uncle Darius. They smell happy together, and they both love me." The silence that followed was deafening. In one innocent outburst, a 3-year-old had just publicly rejected the engagement that was supposed to secure the future of the Northern Territories. And every alpha present had heard her do it. Lyra met Darius's eyes across the frozen tableau of the engagement party. His face was carefully blank, but she could see the storm brewing behind his eyes, political calculation warring with personal desire, duty battling against the impossible dream a child had just voiced. Selena stood like a statue, her perfect composure finally shattered beyond repair. The rejection was complete, public, and witnessed by everyone who mattered in their world. As Lyra carried the still sobbing Ember away from the wreckage of what was supposed to be a celebration, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Because in the wolf world, when a royal heir chose sides, everyone else had to choose too. And not everyone was going to choose peace. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like and share this video to be the first to get notified when the part 2 of this story drops.